first two learning objectives at the bottom of page 13. Oh.
Participants are introduced to Peter Drucker's management framework as a support for ROMA principles and practices. Participants will be able to understand the purpose of a mission statement and identify its elements.
Okay, great. How many of you have heard of Peter Drucker or are familiar with who he is? Okay. I just saw 2 people. Okay, 3. Okay, 4. You guys are shy about Peter. Okay. So one of the things I want to do is introduce Peter Drucker and help you answer his number 1 question: what is our mission? We're going to review and write mission statements, and we're going to talk about mission change and mission drift. ROMA, as we've talked about before, is defined as a management practice that incorporates the use of outcomes or results into the administration, management, and operation of human services. And the successful implementation of ROMA needs to come from a framework that is established by the organization. And this framework takes root in the mission of the agency. It distinguished the agency from just collecting and reporting data to actually implementing change, implementing results. It's sort of like going from that 1,000-foot level to the 10,000-foot level. There are some agencies that do nothing but what is the bare minimum to stay in compliance. And then there are those agencies that really take an analytical look at what they're doing, and they look at the results of their outcomes, and it becomes meaningful to them, and they make changes based on that. And so the Drucker Foundation has put out a book that is the Drucker Foundation Self-Assessment Tool. And I'm certain that if you ask the planning division manager if you could check this out of the library or borrow it, I'm sure that she'll be willing to let you do that. Otherwise, it will be up here on the table if you want to take a look at it during lunch. But it teaches a well-respected business model on structuring this conceptual framework of looking at outcomes and results. Let me tell you a little bit about Peter Drucker, for those of you who aren't familiar with him. He is the world's most recognized management consultant, and he's worked with both the nonprofit and private sector business world and establishing results orientation. How do you serve or best do the service of your organization? His teaching is included in the ROMA curriculum because he's an expertise in both of these areas, so he can walk both worlds, the private sector and the nonprofit sector. How many of you know that the Claremont University has a Peter Drucker School of Management? Okay. They have an excellent program on nonprofit management. Okay. That was a salute to Peter Drucker. They have an amazing program. So it's local. It's only about 45-minute drive from here. So if you're ever in Claremont, stop over at the college, the campus, and visit the center since it is so close. This book is a tool that every community action agency can utilize, and it's easy to use. There are 5 basic questions that you can ask that get you moving towards building a foundation or framework for your agency. Outcomes are not developed or used in isolation. That's one of the important things that Peter Drucker teaches. They reflect the agency's accomplishments as measured by changed lives and communities. And so in the Community Action Promise, it talks about changed lives, it changes community. And this is one of the things that Peter Drucker really supports. And it's important to know this because even though CAP Riverside is not a nonprofit community action agency, community action agencies are mission driven, they're not profit driven. And so the framework for that looks a little bit different because you're touching lives as opposed to touching profits or purse strings or whatever. So as I mentioned earlier, we have, unfortunately, this Peter Drucker book is out of print. And so if you, I got permission to photocopy the key questions, his 5 questions for you guys to have. In order for us to buy that book, it would have been $64 a piece to go to an outside source to get it. So I think your fiscal department probably appreciates that I didn't do that. Yes. So, but here are the 5 questions, and you'll notice that they're color-coded. Here you go. Okay, and then for those of you who may need a copy of the Peter Drucker handbook that talks about these specific things, there you go. Okay, so let's consider question number 1. What is our mission? Okay, this question sets the stage for the importance of the organization's mission to establish its intended outcomes. If you turn to page 14, if someone would read that Drucker quote in paragraph 2 that starts with each social sector. Okay, well,
Each social sector institution exists to make a distinctive difference in the lives of individuals and in society. Making this difference is the mission, the organization's purpose and very reason for being. A mission cannot be impersonal. It has to have deep meaning, be something we believe in.
Okay, thank you. It's a fundamental responsibility of leadership. A fundamental responsibility of leadership is to make sure that everyone knows the mission, understands it, and lives it. And that's why I understand that this particular community action agency, before each board meeting, you read the promise, and at the end of the board meeting, you read your mission statement, and that the promise is read at each of your staff meetings. And so incorporating the mission statement also helps ground all of your staff into what are they coming to work for every day? What is it that makes their lives meaningful when they help people every day that come into this agency? And so now, would someone read the gray box that starts at the bottom of page 14 that starts the agency mission?
The agency mission is a concise description of the agency's purpose. It is the foundational statement upon which the agency builds. It says why the agency is in business.
Okay. And then just one final quote from the actual Drucker workbook. The effective mission statement is short and sharply focused. It should fit on a t-shirt. The mission says why you do what you do, not the means by which you do it. The mission is broad, even eternal, yet directs you to do the right things now and into the future so that everyone in the organization can say, what I am doing contributes to the goal. So it must be clear and it must be inspirational. It must inspire. So to sum this up, the mission statement should address 2 central themes. It should tell us why we are in business and what are the results that we are trying to achieve. While the message of the mission statement in Drucker is compelling, it's not complete. Any idea of why what Drucker says is a mission statement is not necessarily complete when you put that in the framework of a community action agency? Okay, so now it talks about being in business, but what happens with our 6 national goals? We've got something as a community action agency that help us define what our mission is. We also have that legislation about ending poverty, that war on poverty. So one of the things that make mission statements very unique for community action is a marriage of who we are and what we're here for, which is a part of the 6 national goals. The goals make us unique in the human service area. There's no other organization like a community action agency. We're very unique. And it's important that we recognize that anti-poverty mission that was legislated in the War on Poverty, the Economic Opportunity Act. So one of the things we have to consider is the effectiveness of our mission in delivering on these particular goals that set us aside from any other organization in the country. The mission statement is the first place to search for outcomes. We are here to make a difference in human lives. We are also here to make a difference in community. And making a difference in our agency is one of the ways that we facilitate that. If you look at the bottom of page 14, there are 4 elements that should be within a mission statement. And if I can get someone to read the first bullet. Okay, Steve?
Is the population to be served identified? Does the mission identify low income or other designations? Is there a geographical target for population?
Okay, thank you. Okay, how about someone for the second bullet?
Can you tell from the mission statement the types of services that are administered by the organization or its referrals? As Drucker says, the hospital isn't going to sell shoes and it's not going to be into education. It's going to take care of the sick.
Okay, thank you, Patty. How about that third bullet?
Are the expected and achieved outcomes clearly stated? Can you tell what will change?
Okay, thank you, Lynette. And the fourth bullet?
Is there any identification of relationships with other organizations that show the connections that help further its mission?
Okay. Well, we're going to test this. Let's see how you can identify the elements that are in these mission statements. What I'm passing out right now are sample mission statements. We're going to code the first one together. And you will see on the table in front of you, in the middle, there's a set of pens, ink pens, and they're different colors. And as you look at the 5 questions, there's a page attached to it, and the color coding is associated with the 4 elements. So blue is population, purple is outcome, orange is services, and green is relationship. And so you might want to keep in reference those descriptions of the 4 elements that is on page 14 to help you. So let's do the first mission statement. If someone could read that.
To advocate for, support, and train CSBG-funded agencies, utilizing our collective strength to eradicate poverty.
Okay. Now this mission statement happens to be a mission statement of a CSBG state organization. So it's like if it would be CSD's mission statement. So who is the population? Who would you circle as blue?
Funded agencies.
Yes, the funded agencies, okay. What's the outcome that you would circle in purple?
To eradicate poverty?
To eradicate poverty, yes, okay, good. How about services? What are the services that they're offering up?
So train and support,
Support and train, advocate for?
what color services?
Okay, and relationships. Now, it's a little bit of a stretch, but you can stretch it a little. What's relationships?
Partnerships.
Okay, partnerships, but what about what is it about the partnership?
Collective strength.
Collective strength, okay? So, every mission statement, now you could put that on the back of the t-shirt, right? Probably what their mission statement is. You could definitely put it on the back of a business card. You know, I don't think CSD staff will walk around with t-shirts with this on the back of it. But, you know, I have seen, literally, have seen mission statements that are 1 to 2 pages long and all. And you get lost in it. You have to tell your message right up front and be concise and have these 4 elements in it: population, outcome, services, and relationships. Okay. So,
Real quick, will you go over what color represents each thing?
okay, now in your handout that you have, on the second page, it has the colors for you. But again, blue is population, purple is outcome, orange is services, and relationships is green. Am I giving you the right information? Okay. Okay, I was thinking, oh, my book might say something different. Okay, so you want to think of the mission statement as a sound bite. If you were in or someone says like the shortest elevator speech you could possibly make, if you're on the elevator with a potential funder and you wanted to tell them what CAP Riverside does, you should be able to recite the mission as a sound bite so that they know who you serve, what changes you want to make, through how are you going to do that, and who you're going to do that with. So let's go ahead and apply these 4 elements. What I'm going to do is your table 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Mark's by himself, 6, table number 6. I'm going to give you one of these numbered mission statement. What I would like for you to do is come to an agreement, circle the different elements in the colors. So table number 1, if you would do mission statement number 3. Table number 2, if you would do mission statement number 6. Table number 3, if you would do mission statement number 8. Table number 4, if you would do mission statement number 5. Table number 5, if you would do mission statement number 4. And table number 6, Mark, if you would do mission statement number 10. Okay, and I'm going to give you a few minutes. And if you need to go back and look at page 14 to kind of see how those elements are described, please, use that as a tool. Now, it's possible that not all 4 elements are in your mission statement. So be on the lookout for that, and if it isn't there, just state that, that element isn't there.
Service 3, 4, improving lives of Because creating solutions to poverty is what
Creating
the
solutions is
mission
kind of the
is.
services, that's the services is creating solutions, right?
I think so, because improving lives is
And
the
the outcomes
outcome.
include. Yeah, let's go to the outcome. Improving lives is the outcome.
Services creating solutions, right? Creating solutions to poverty, services.
Yeah, but the relationship, there's really a relationship.
Let's see.
I guess the
No, it
relationship
really
would
doesn't
be,
say, does it?
that would be the hour part.
Yeah, okay, let's go for that. Yeah, because hour and
Because,
partnership.
yeah, because that's what Jamie did. It says I have, but I can't tell you about. He used a lot of we, a lot of inclusive. It's like going on the subtle, but it's in there, so binds everything together, throws everybody together.
So there's no service
I never studied that, so it's like
self-sufficiency.
phenomenal structure. The message.
So how about another 30 seconds? So table number 1, you actually had mission statement number 3. If you guys would read the mission statement, then we'll see how it gets dissected.
I'll read it in your solution. Creating solutions to poverty, improving lives in our community.
Okay, so what's the population?
We said the community.
Okay. Okay. And what's the outcome?
Probably improving lives,
Improve lives. And the services?
creating solutions to poverty.
Yeah, that would be that, but it's very vague. It's, it
Discloses the,
yeah, but it's close. Okay. And what about relationships?
and we talked about that. We think that our is sort of like the inclusive partnership word. So
Okay.
maybe that's the best one that would fit in there.
Okay, okay, and actually, when you think about it, it's not really specific. As I was saying, not all 4 elements may not be in your mission statement. That's what may make it weak or may make it strong. And, it's a stretch to say that, but it really doesn't have a clearly defined relationship as to who it's doing with. And that would be one area I would say that you probably want to improve if you were coaching this agency on rewriting it. Okay, so table number 5, how about reading yours? And then if you're number 4.
To eliminate the causes of poverty in partnership with the County Human Services Office by strengthening low-income individuals, families, and communities through self-sufficiency initiatives
Okay,
in Riverside County.
okay. And so who's the population?
So the population would correspond with who is our customer, number 2. So we circled low-income individuals, families, and communities.
Very good, okay. What about outcomes? What do you want to change?
So outcomes would be what are our results,
Mm-hmm.
and we circled self-sufficiency.
Okay, now, that says self-sufficiency initiatives. How does self-sufficiency initiative change lives?
Well, they provide the framework for people to be empowered.
Okay.
And to have access to opportunities and different ways of thinking.
Okay, now that would be a good outcome, maybe that they could write into this. But based on what they've written, anyone
We also
wanna-
circled
okay.
strengthening.
Okay. Okay, so that's a
By strengthening low-income individuals
okay.
as
So
results.
okay, so what about eliminating poverty? Eliminate the causes of poverty. Yeah, that's one change. Strengthening, yes, it is a change. and all, but their whole premise is about eliminating the causes of poverty, okay? And services is back where you're talking about self-sufficiency. So the self-sufficiency initiatives are the services that they would provide. What about relationships?
We've got partnerships with the County Human Services Office.
Yes, yes, very good, very good. Okay, so you guys see where those are how that's identified, that outcome is about eliminating poverty? Okay, so table 4, you have number 5.
To propose, implement, and advocate developmental and human services delivery programs for social and economically disadvantaged children and families.
Okay,
The population is disadvantaged children and families.
okay,
The outcome is to deliver human services.
okay, now we're looking at a change. So what would change in the lives of these people?
They will change socially and economically.
Okay, well, we can assume that they would, remember, not all elements may be in these statements
Mhm.
and all.
I don't think you
Yeah,
have it.
I don't think you
we
have
it.
outcomes
Yeah.
in there. That's one of the weak area. It doesn't tell you what's going to change for these people. It's just that you're going to deliver programs to help, to help them.
Right.
Okay, what about services?
Services are to propose and implement and advocate.
Okay, and relationships?
I guess our relationship is with, huh?
Social services?
Human.
Is it, they don't have, there's
Yeah,
none.
they
Missing already.
There's none.
I don't
You know, one of the things that will make this real easy, if you have to search for the answer,
Mhm.
they didn't clearly define it. It's
That's
not,
why we
it's
were
not
trying to
clearly
look it
defined,
up.
it's not concise and stuff. And when you look at this particular mission statement, 2 out of 4 doesn't make it a strong mission statement. They've got 2 critical areas that are missing, outcomes and relationships. Okay, so let's go to table number 2. You have number 6.
To work with other agencies, jurisdictions, and the people of YY County to plan and manage social services and to achieve a safe and healthy community.
Okay,
Population is agencies, jurisdictions, and people of YY County. Outcome is achieve a safe and healthy community. Services is plan and manage social services, and relationship is to work with.
okay. So now, if we have relationships with other people, who would those other people be? Who are we working with?
Other agencies.
Other agencies,
Partnerships.
okay. So those aren't the people that you're serving, those are the people that you're working with. So we're gonna work with these other agencies and we're going to manage and deliver social services so that we can have safer and healthier communities, but for whom?
Communities.
They don't say. No, they don't say. There's no population mentioned in here. Because if you look at the top line, it says to work with other agencies, jurisdiction, and the people of YY County. That's who you're working with. That's not who you're trying to change and all. So they were missing the population, which is kind of interesting because that's one of the most critical parts, you know, of the mission statement. Who are you doing this for? Okay. Table number 3, you have number 8.
Yeah.
To provide programs leading to self-sufficiency in XY County.
Okay.
And the population is XY County. The outcome is self-sufficiency. Services are the programs, and there's no relationship element.
Okay. Okay, so services, you're right, to provide programs, but do you have a clear picture of who those people are in that county that you're serving?
No.
No, it could very easily be that some of these are the relationships. It's not very clear or concise. And relationships? No, no relationships. Okay, outcomes, what does self-sufficiency mean?
Well, you'd have to define that further,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but for a mission
Yeah.
statement, I don't think you would get too.
No, You guys need to rewrite your mission statement.
Yeah, he's too short.
Okay, so we've got the loner at table number 6.
Okay. To administer grants which provide assistance to the low-income citizens of the state to promote self-sufficiency. And for
Okay.
the population, it's the low-income citizens. For the outcomes, it's self-sufficiency, or to promote self-sufficiency. The services would be provide assistance, and the relationship implied is the grantor and the grantee.
Okay, but it's not clearly defined, no. And again, the same kind of outcomes that Lynette and Michael had. What's self-sufficiency? What does that constitute? You know, how do you know people's lives have changed when you talk about self-sufficiency? So you can clarify it a little bit more, do a little bit better on these. So when you're looking at mission statements, you want to make sure that it has all of those 4 elements in it. One of the things that the ROMA teaches us, and that the organizational standards, which are new, is a new legislation that has been put out by the Office of Community Services. One of the things that it talks about is, do you have to clearly identify poverty or low income in your mission statement if you are a community action agency? And you don't have to say poverty or anti-poverty or whatever, but you need to address in some way that you are about eliminating or reducing poverty. So you can be creative about that, but you know, if you're a community action agency, your primary mission is to eliminate poverty in the jurisdiction that you're on. So why not say poverty within your mission statement? That's what you're all about. There are some communities, particularly with public community action agencies, that don't want to recognize that there's poverty in their jurisdiction. And so they don't want mission statements that address poverty. But if you're a community action agency, guess what? That's your legislative responsibility, is eliminating, reducing poverty within the jurisdiction that you serve. So that the mission statement is foundational to everything that we do. And so when we look at building our logic model, we want to put the mission statement at the bottom. This builds and holds everything that we do as an entity, a community action agency. So now if you want to turn to page 18 in your book, we're going to talk about mission change and mission drift. So how often, and this is a question to you guys, how often does your agency review its mission statement? Anybody?
It's supposed to be every 3 to 5 years, isn't it? Something like that?
Some people do, okay. Actually, you need to review your mission statement more frequently than that. Reviewing your mission statement is different from changing your mission statement. So when you want to review your mission statement, is usually about every year or about whenever you do your strategic plan. Now, you may have a strategic plan that is 2 year, 3 years, and 5 year, but you're going to be reviewing it every year to make sure that you're on track with it. You may not change it until year 3 or year 5, but you're going to be measuring it. And the times that you look at reviewing your mission statement again is when you eliminate any major programs and services, or you add any major programs and services. And you want to make sure that your mission statement is in alignment with that. It may not require any change if you're broad enough, but it may be that you may need to make an adaptation of it. And generally, you know, who needs to be involved in doing those mission changes? Who should you involve in the mission review?
Your customers, the community?
You could have customers, you could have community, but think about it a little closer to home.
The commission.
Your commission, your board members, definitely. They have to vote on any change. Okay, and who else?
Their staff.
Your staff, of course.
The line
Yeah.
staff.
Yeah, everybody, not only line staff, but managers as well, need to be, all staff need to be involved in it. Because who's delivering the services?
All of them.
The staff. Mhm. And who's your governance? Who approves the direction and guidance of your agency? The board, your board. Well, for CAP, Riverside is the Board of Supervisors, because it's a public CAP, but the majority of community action agencies are nonprofits, so it would be their board, is their governance. Okay, so if you take a look on page 19, and you look at that first paragraph, we want to talk about mission change. When does a mission change? If I could get someone to please read the original mission statement for the March of Dimes that's in the gray box.
To eradicate polio.
Okay. And then what happened?
They did it, they succeeded.
They succeeded, okay. So they eradicated polio. That was their major goal, their major outcome. So how did they change their mission statement? What does it read now?
Improve pregnancy outcomes and reduction, and elimination of birth defects through education and research.
Okay. So that's a good example of when you change. You know, you wouldn't have March of Dimes still eradicating polio as its major outcome if it's already been eradicated. And you know, there's hopefully will be one day where we've eradicated or eliminated a sufficient level of poverty in Riverside County, where we have been called Bliss County, is where people live in Riverside without poverty and maybe there will be one day that we might achieve that. It's a lofty goal. But then we could look at doing some major changes with our mission statement. Okay, so how about somebody reading about the YMCA? What was their original mission?
To provide housing, recreation, and a faith-based community center for young women.
Okay, and then what happened?
They changed his focus.
They changed their focus. And so now when they changed their focus, you know, what's the new mission statement for the YMCA?
Eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all by providing safe places for women and girls. So they broadened their
They broaden it. And it goes on.
building strong women leaders and advocating for women's rights and civil rights in Congress.
Okay. So they, like you said, they broadened their focus, and they came more into the 20th century in terms of leadership change for women, the recognition that women can be leaders, and embracing everyone as opposed to a singular focus on faith. faith still grounds them, but they broaden their reach in terms of who they can help and who they can change. Okay, so now our last topic under mission is mission drift. And so let's turn to page 20. And if I could get someone to read the first paragraph that talks about mission drift is the phenomenon.
Mission drift is the phenomenon which occurs when the agency departs from its original purpose and core values to take on a task that is perhaps related but not directly in support of the mission. In some cases, this is a response to external events, such as available funding for something the organization never did before. In other cases, internal events can lead to mission drift, such as a major turnover of staff and or board members.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. If you remember that the mission is the basis which every decision of the organization is to be made, it becomes easier not to drift. And a lot of times what happens, people will get an influx of money, but it's for a program that is on the surface a little related, but really takes you a little bit of field. For instance, maybe you're doing self-sufficiency programs that teach like financial skills, financial security and whatever, and there's a major fund that comes out that's a prisoner reentry program. And it's all about reentering prisoners. Well, in a way, it's kind of related with some self-sufficiency, but there's a lot of tasks and services that your organization would be doing if you got that funding that you would normally not do. You have to step back and say, are we working for the funder, because they're giving us this money, or are we working for our own customers and our own mission, and maybe we should look for funding elsewhere. If it's going to detract from support of your existing program, you have a decision to make. Do you change? Do you refocus? Or are you drifting? And a lot of times we call that the tail wagging the dog, whereas it's the funder who's deciding where you go as opposed to you deciding what support you get and resources you get to deliver your mission. The other thing is, this happens particularly with nonprofit organizations. You get board members that have hidden agendas. And all of a sudden, you find them moving. We're an anti-poverty agency, and all of a sudden we become this big education agency. Well, education is a tool and a strategy for helping people become self-sufficient, but is that what that agency is all about? You're shifting the focus because someone has a pet project that they want to get funded, and all of a sudden they want to move that focus to something else. And so you see that, you see that a lot. It doesn't I won't say it doesn't happen in public entities because we are a unique, Riverside is a unique community action agency as a public agency, whereas the Board of Supervisors does not appoint commissioners. They allow the agency through their bylaws to create that board of governance. There are, like in LA County, the city council appoints all of their commissioners. They don't get to select who's on their board. There are other public CAPs across the country. They don't get a choice. So you've got all of this political influence guiding and directing the mission of the agency, and you can start seeing drifts when people have their special projects or their special interests and it comes up to vote. And also that's one of the reasons why, Stephen, is a real important thing to review every year the mission to make sure that you're not drifting away from what that core mission is that got voted on. Worked on by staff and voted on by your commission. or your board of directors. Yes?
Would you say there are different ways to accomplish the mission? So maybe one perspective would be different from the other, one leadership group would be different from the other, but they're still accomplishing the mission.
It could be, and where you might see that come out are maybe newly defined outcomes and strategies for taking a different approach. But like for March of Dimes, they eliminated polio. For them to continue in that research area didn't make any sense. They needed to expand to go out elsewhere. We could look at different ways, say for instance that self-sufficiency works. It's different in so many different ways, and you can, the outcome may be to increase self-sufficiency for low-income families, and then the strategies for facilitating that could maybe be, it could be grant funding driven, it could be leadership driven, depending upon what those leaders may say. I think there's room for both. What's important is that it is a group decision and it's based on what the needs are that your customers identify. Not what the agency identifies are the needs, but what the customers identify. And we're going to talk more about that in part 2 of module 2 when we get to community assessment. Do any of you serve on other boards?
On board, yes.
Okay. Have you, in your experience of being a board member, experienced or seen, or anyone else seen any other mission drifts, or even on national, agencies or program where they've drifted away from what their original intent was?
I'm on the Fair Housing Council board, and no, I haven't noticed that.
Okay.
I've only been there for a couple of years, so
Okay.
maybe a time.
That's good. That's really good, because that's the danger of where you're not living up to what your agency is when you start drifting. So do you understand the difference between a change and a drift? Okay. Okay, great. Okay, I want to close this part of Module 2 with one more quote from Drucker, and it's at the bottom of page 20 and in the gray box. And it says, Drucker tells us defining the nonprofit mission is difficult, painful, and risky, but it alone enables you to set goals and objectives and go to work. Unless the mission is explicitly expressed, clearly understood, and supported by every member of the agency, the enterprise is at the mercy of events. Decision makers throughout will decide and act on the basis of different, incompatible, and conflicting ideas. I think that's part of addressing what you were saying, Brenda. They will pull in opposing directions without even being aware of their divergence. And your performance is what suffers. So having a clear, focused path, roadmap, so to speak, that's what you can look at your mission statement is, helps you stay focused and helps you put your energy and your resources and your talents to the fulfillment of the mission. What that mission is built on a number of different things. So just to recap this part of Module 2, the successful implementation of ROMA must follow a conceptual framework that's established by the organization. And this framework, this conceptual framework, is your mission statement. The results orientation is reflected in the agency's mission statement. And then the Drucker self-assessment workbook was introduced into the ROMA curriculum because it was developed by an expert in the field. It's been validated, it's credible, and it has good best practice and working tools. Not-for-profit organizations, or let's just say community action agencies, are mission-driven. They're not profit-driven. And the mission statement should address two central themes: Why are we in business, and what results are we trying to achieve? They need to be strongly and sharply focused, like a sound bite or a t-shirt, you know. And there's a difference between a tagline and a mission statement. Community Action's tagline is helping people, changing lives, but the mission is a little bit longer. It has those 4 elements. And what are those 4 elements?
Population,
Improving
outcomes,
communities.
services, and relationships.
And relationship. Population, outcome, services, and relationships. We don't do it in a vacuum. Okay, and what is mission change? Anyone?
It's where you actually change the direction of your organization,
Okay, and usually what may cause that?
completion of an objective.
Okay, yes, completion of an outcome. Okay.
Changes
Or
in
revisiting
services.
it, like
Revisiting.
the YMCA
Mhm.
did, to broaden the.
The scope of what they're doing. Okay, and Patty, you, it's
It's changes in services.
changes in services. Okay, and what's mission drift? How does that differ?
That's when you start making decisions that aren't based on the original mission.
Okay, yes, that's a good way of summarizing that. Where you're not grounded and you're just kind of slowly moving away from what the original intent was. And where on the logic model would the mission statement be?
The bottom.
It wouldn't be because of this big fat M on the bottom. Okay, so now for programs, when you start doing your missions, start doing your logic models for your mission, statement should be appearing on the bottom of each of your logic models. And it isn't just to keep in mind, it isn't just programs and services that have logic model. Administration has logic models too. So there would be a logic model for fiscal. There would be a logic model for clerical. There would be a logic model for facilities. There would be logic models for how you run your organization. Because remember, the operation of your organization from the administrative level has to support and facilitate the mission as well. Otherwise, you're working against the purposes of the program and services if you don't have the underlying directed, guided support of your administrative staff. So you guys get to do logic models as well. Okay. So let's talk about needs assessment. Okay. So we are on page 21. And so now that we know what you're in business for, and you've talked about the mission being the driving force behind the agency's functioning and identifying the mission statement for your agency, you want to decide, how do you get to those outcomes? How do you know what services to supply? And the appropriate question is, you first need to identify the needs of the community. And so let's kind of review the last 5 objectives, learning objectives that were on page 13 of the manual. Okay. The first one is participants identify the difference between family, agency, or community needs statements. Participants understand, you guys are the participants I'm talking about, participants understand that the proper identification of the problem sets the path for the solution. Participants recognize that identification of resources is an important part of the assessment process. Participants learn the importance of gathering data from multiple sources to assure a comprehensive community assessment, and that participants are introduced to data analysis and prioritization processes. So it doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's a process to all of this that you guys are going to learn about, what are the best ways of helping to determine what your customers need. Because it's all about your customers. That's what you're in business for. So on page 21, a community assessment is a systematic process for creating a profile of the needs and resources that are in any given particular community or target population. So it's very systematic. And we most frequently think of community as kind of like a community, a place where everybody is gathered together within a geographical area. What other communities, or how do you guys define community?
A profession.
Okay, profession, a community of profession, like accountants, okay? What other communities?
It's religion.
Religion, a community of faith, okay? What other?
The area where you live, your neighborhood.
Okay, that's a community, a place. That's, a geographical area. It could be a small, like neighborhoods. A lot of times we call those like neighborhoods and stuff, or communities. Okay.
Ethnicity?
Ethnicity, yes. It could be race, it could be ethnicity, it could be socioeconomic status. So there's a lot of different communities that we look at. But what's important is each agency must define the community that it serves. And for this agency, what's the primary community that you guys serve?
Low income?
Low income, okay? So on page 22, a needs assessment, it can be thought of as a way to identify the difference between what exists and what should be. What don't we have? What do we have now, and what should we have? And is a way of gathering information on which we can make decisions about what those should be's are. Look at the list that's in the middle of the page, and these are some of the services that community action provides. Can you tell me, what of these services does your community action agency provide?
Employment,
Okay.
income management,
Emergency services?
What else?
services for youth,
Okay.
Education, services for senior citizens.
How do you provide services for education, for
Seniors.
seniors? Thank you.
The VITA program has a component.
Okay, your VITA program. And how else do you serve?
We prioritize them because they're the vulnerable population for our weatherization and
Okay.
utility assistance.
Okay, great. So energy services. Okay.
Health,
Health.
through the Healthy Vet program.
Okay, yes.
Linkages.
Yes, okay.
Linkages, work
Okay.
with our partners.
Okay, linkages with the partners. What about housing? Do you do housing?
We improved their home by doing weatherization
Okay,
services.
okay,
and
good
improved
connection.
the health and safety conditions by checking for, carbon monoxide in the gas appliances.
Okay.
And any hazardous condition, and have the appliances be replaced.
Okay, so that falls into two areas. That all falls under housing and also under health and all. So, looking at some of these programs and services, you dig deeper. It's important to go below the broad category and look at the details of it. And it provides a better, clearer identification of the needs and the services that you are looking to address. And so by show of hands, how many of you believe that there is a need in Riverside County for education? Okay. So let's see if we can drill that down a little bit. And if I could get my trusty scribe to come up, and if you would turn to page 23. Now, you want to remember that these goals or outcomes represent or can represent 3 different levels. If you look at this chart right here behind Mr. Mark, it's family or individual, the people side, agency or community. And so every outcome that you're going to write is either going to be an individual family outcome, an agency outcome, or a community outcome. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the example of education and walk it through these 3 different levels. So you can see how the wording of them would be different, okay? So if you would please, Mr. Mark, write education on the dry erase board. Okay, so why is education a need or a problem in Riverside County?
Employability,
Okay, employability,
Self-sufficiency.
self-sufficiency. Okay, so let's start with those 2. Self-sufficiency and employability. Okay, if you were thinking about an individual, how would employability translate into a need for education? What's the problem that people are having with education that impacts their employability?
not completing it.
Okay, so would it be fair that individuals do not have a high school diploma or high school, yeah, okay. So individuals do not have a high school diploma. And one quick way to help you identify the different levels is what it starts out with. If I say it's an individual or families do not have this, then it's probably going to be a family goal. So let's put F and circle F at the end to say that this is family. Okay, so how does people not having a high school diploma impact community?
Because the jobs that they're gonna get are not, higher paying, so they won't be able to support their families like they
Okay.
would like to.
So now that's still on the individual level, that they're unable to support their families
Or themselves.
or themselves. But what happens to the community when we don't have an educated workforce?
So you get more crime.
Okay, we can have more crime, so maybe it would be community. Okay, so if we want to put up more crime under where employability and self-sufficiency is, and then we can write a statement for a community statement. What would that community look like? They have more crime because individuals don't have education?
Well, they wouldn't have the income, so they would look to
Yeah.
other
They're
methods
unmotivated.
outside the
Okay.
established norm to
Okay,
generate income.
okay. So that's so now that is kind of more related to a cause of crime. But the community at large, what happens with economic development?
Well, then it detracts it because people don't want to develop in a community with high crime rates.
Okay, so we're still, okay, on high crime rates, okay. So with education, are you saying that people who don't have a high school education are unable to secure a job to support their family?
It depends what kind of jobs are available. If you have
Okay,
a lot of agriculture, something that require a great deal of skill, like a high school diploma would give you, then maybe you wouldn't need the education. But if you're in an urbanized environment to where you need, intellectual skills to apply to the job market, then yeah, because you're going to be more productive, you're going to get a higher tax base. There's all sorts of different things that flow
Okay.
from a more affluent society.
okay? That can come out of that, okay?
Isn't it that if lack of, I mean, if they don't have the education because they didn't have the money to begin with, their low income, so then they don't have their goals, I mean, their goals, their hopes,
Okay.
I mean, they see life in a different way.
Okay. So now, I think we're both going here, we're going through some of the causes of, like, cause of crime or cause of despair or lack of self-sufficiency. But overall, a picture of the community, maybe the community just doesn't have an educated workforce as something, and then some of the things that come off of that are increased crime,
Increased social
lower,
services.
increased social
Yeah.
services, lack of a economic base. Businesses don't want to come into an area that has a high crime rate. So would you be willing to, accept maybe a statement that community does not have an educated workforce? Would that, or
As
am
what?
am I totally rewriting?
No, I'm
As a
saying
result
as
of-
what?
As a outcome, as a problem, as a community problem. So we have an agency individual problem. Individuals do not have a high school diploma. Okay, so how would we translate that into a community problem or outcome?
Again,
It
that goes
doesn't
back
attract
to,
business.
Hmm?
It doesn't attract outside business to come in.
and it depends
Right,
upon the
and if
kind of
it doesn't
community you're in.
attract-
If you're in a community like, as I was mentioning before, if it was all agricultural based, where you didn't need the high school diploma, it might not be as important. And so it's community dependent.
It is
Depends upon what the
community
job market demands.
Okay.
Yeah, because if
Okay.
the
Community's
community,
goals are.
Okay,
if the community itself does not offer the, the employment,
okay.
I got
So,
two things to
yes.
that. Well, one, are we still like in a hypothetical mode here? Are we
We're-
talking about Riverside County? Because Riverside County's got a 82% high school graduation.
We're in a
Okay.
hypothetical.
And then if you go
Yep.
for the agricultural, me and Lita were talking earlier, based on that movie, McFarland. So you could say that there wasn't a need for education there because they're just pickers. However, when they
Oh, the
introduced the
private
education piece to them and they started graduating from high school and college, it really improved the community dramatically over
because
the
they
next
broadened their
20 years.
horizons.
Yeah, so.
Okay, well, one of the things I'm trying to help you to see is, I think we're going too much into the detail of it as opposed to the upper level of the difference between individual, community, and agency. So that the individual has the problem, and it's about education. It may be that they do not have a high school diploma. So how that impacts community may be if you have a bunch of individuals who don't have a high school diploma, the community doesn't have an educated workforce.
Right.
Okay, so there's a lot of different reasons why that is, and there's a lot of individual outcomes and services that would be addressed with each of these, depending upon what the identified need is. Like out in East County, they have totally different needs than Mid and West County. But the difference between a individual goal is the problem the person has. What the community has is that bigger problem based on the problems that the individual have. So if you guys don't mind, if we could use the example that community lacks an educated workforce, okay?
Do you want me to erase this one?
No, go ahead and leave that up there because it's very valuable. But community does not have an educated workforce. Okay, so now think about your agency and think about the impact that it has on education. What resources, what kind of problem would the agency have that would be impacted by this problem of people not having a high school diploma? Do you have an education component?
In our agency?
Yes.
In your
Financial,
agency.
the financial
Yeah.
education.
Okay, but remember we're talking about the high school diploma.
Oh,
Do you have a GED program?
no.
Okay. Do you have partners, do you partner
Yes.
with that they have GED programs?
Mhm.
Okay.
The youth program.
You know, let's say, for instance, well, education is part of your mission statement. Facilitate through education, wealth building, and on with the mission statement. So education is a part of it. So if we're looking at education, what does the agency lack or not have? Or how would it be connected with any of these two?
The education component, we just have connections, but we don't have the
Okay,
education component.
okay. So,
Need a community goal.
do we have sufficient education, community referrals?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We have some connections, some referrals,
Okay,
but not enough to get that, make it a complete change.
okay,
We have an aspect that we had it for higher education, for those who already have a high school diploma.
okay.
Access development.
Okay, so we do have a program
Yeah.
that helped them achieve post-secondary education, but do you have anything that helps them with the GED besides referrals?
No.
And
No.
sufficient? And Frank, you mentioned
I
something?
mentioned something about, going back to like Steve's comment, if the community goal has nothing to do with education, it has more to do with just employment of these individuals, then they just need a minimum skills, not necessarily a diploma for that community.
Okay.
You go back to what the community needs.
Okay.
I mean, the community might not need anybody beyond a high school education, or
Okay.
maybe not even that.
And that's a good point, and that's one of the areas that we would look at addressing in an assessment. But to show you the difference between an individual goal, outcome, a community outcome, and an agency outcome, it may be that the agency lacks sufficient GED referral sources, partners, or something like that. So that if you put, the agency lacks sufficient referral sources. One of the ways of being able to identify the different levels is it generally starts with what the level is. So when you're looking at an outcome, if it says families or individuals, youth, parents, low-income people, things that talk about individual, then it's going to be a family level. If it starts with the community lacks, the community has a high crime rate. The community lacks entry-level, non-skilled jobs. The community lacks higher-level skilled jobs, professional jobs. Or the agency lacks direct educational programs or secondary educational programs. Then you can usually tell what level it is. Sometimes you have to tweak it a little bit to make sure, because a lot of times a community outcome will be written like a individual outcome. And you need to be able to separate. So if it's for the person, if it's something that that individual needs or you want to make a change in there, like skill building or literacy building, or resolving hunger, or having a safe home, then it's individual. Now, having a safe home, safe and healthy home, may be individual, but it could also be community. The community lacks safe and healthy homes for low-income people. Low-income people lack access to safe and healthy homes. So we've got the individual, we've got the community, and the agency may lack services to provide safe and healthy homes. So it's on those three different levels. sometimes it looks like a problem is multi-level, and it can be. You can have, like say for instance, the crime. You could have crime that touches individual, community, and agency. But your mission is going to tell you which level are you going to address. What is going to be the priority? The other thing is that your needs assessment, your community assessment, your customers are going to identify what's more important. It could come out that it's more important that there are non-skilled labor jobs than there are, professional degree jobs. And that would be from talking to the people who identify with a problem or with the needs. And we're going to talk more about that in the needs assessment. So what I want to do is, you've got this in the book, but this is something that you might want to just have up at your desk. That is a copy of this, poster. They can overlap. Yes, you can sit down. Thank you. You can have a piece of chocolate too. Yeah. So 2 pieces. But this is something that you should remember because there is an overlap. And generally one area touches the other, but when you are actually writing outcomes and when we start filling in this matrix over here, the logic model, you're going to be single focused. You're not going to write a problem statement that has all 3 elements in it. You're just going to focus on one of the elements. Okay. So it's about 10 to 12. Yeah, it is. And, okay. So what we're going to do, what I think I'll do is, because we're getting ready to go into another exercise, and it's going to take you a little more than 10 minutes to do this. So why don't we go ahead and go to lunch now, and come back at 1 o'clock, as we had said we would do between, a little earlier, you get an hour, 70 minutes. Okay.